Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our second month of February, the month of love, for our Voices of Empowerment monthly meetings and our podcast. And I am Bunny Keating, and I'm going to be the facilitator today. We also have with us Melanie Beamer, Maggie Morris-Mingay, and soon to be joining us with a little bit of internet issues is Linda Rogers, the other member of our group for the Voices of Empowerment. You can find us, the Voices of Empowerment, on our public Facebook page, and you can also join our private group, which is Voices of Empowerment as well, where in the future, these will be going live for our monthly, so every third Sunday of the month for 2024. Okay, so this is Family Day weekend here in Ontario, Canada, where we are primarily based. That's where the four of us are from, are actually in Niagara, the Niagara region of Canada. And so Family Day, Valentine's Day. Also, I made a book called Harmony Within, which is your path to self-love, all about self-love. So I decided to talk about self-love. My book is available on Amazon. If you wanted to look it up, just look up my name, Bunny Keating, and you will find it there. Okay. So for self-love, the first part of self-love that I think that is very important is actually becoming self-aware. So for self-love, we need to know what it is that we like, what it is that we have for our personal needs. So whether they be physical needs, emotional needs, spiritual needs, what kind of things we like or don't like, our values, the things in our core values, things that we fully believe in, things that are actually ours and not things that we should be doing. I know personally for me, living an authentic life is that we would have to have things that we actually like and not things that are shamed or guilted into. Because when you're shamed or guilted into, that means that I'll coin the term from Bashar, which is you're a belief thief. So stop being a belief thief. Stop grabbing onto the beliefs of other people and bringing those into your own life. Because I know personally that when I am having any kind of shame, guilt, or stress in my life, it's generally because I'm trying to live up to something that I personally do not believe is my kind of like goal, my set. It's what I think that society expects of me or what other people expect of me, or even in times where you worry about what other people are going to think about you or if people are going to love and accept you. And so those are the types of things that at the beginning, self-awareness is very important. So just things, how much sleep you need. I know me personally, this is something that's like a big stickler. We were talking about this, Linda and I were talking about this when we joined this afternoon just before this. And the question is asked, how much do you sleep? How that kind of thing. And I know that in the past, I would feel guilty and feel bad or were even shamed into the fact that I wanted to take a nap or felt like I needed to take a nap. Being a mom of young children, I was obviously, up at night, and I worked a full-time job as well. And so, yeah, if I came home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and the children were taken care of by their father and I wanted to go lay down for a half an hour, I felt guilty about that. And then I was shamed and saying like, well, why are you going to take a nap? But my body needed that. And so being self-aware and being okay with those types of things, I think is very important. I don't know if the other three people, for the Voices of Empowerment, I know I see some nodding, but what do we have? Like, does anybody else want to add into maybe some kind of needs or likes or anything of the self-awareness type of thing that you might also share in that? Don't everybody put all your hands up at the same time. Just unmute yourself and talk.
All right. Well, for me, like last December is a good example. I really noticed that I needed to take time just for me. And that was a big step for me because I always put everybody else first and I forget myself very often. And I just needed that break for me. And so I canceled out on anything online and even on my phone, unless it was a family emergency. That was the only reason I'd answer the phone. And I really needed that week and a half. And it really replenished me. Like my cup was empty and I just needed to replenish myself fully. And I gave myself that permission. And everyone else around me also accepted this. And it was almost like a new birth for me. And it came with bigger ideas, better things ahead for me. And I know now that I've got to fit it in, not just when my cup is empty, but each and every day. So thank you.
I like the term being self-aware because I think a lot of us, especially young moms or older moms, don't become self-aware of what they need because we took a belief that said once you have children, you no longer matter. It's all about that, or it's all about the job, or it's all about this. I think being self-aware of what you need is super important. For me, it came at a time that my cup was empty and somebody said to me, "What makes you happy?" And I had no clue. So I had to go on a quest of finding what made me happy. I couldn't practice self-care until I knew how to take care of myself because for many years I had adopted the philosophy of my grandmother, the philosophy of my mother, that when you have children, you cease to exist. And your sole purpose in life is to take care of those children. And nobody told me I still mattered.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing to highlight here to our listeners. It doesn't matter where you are in your life or what you're doing in your life. Who you are still matters. What you need still matters. And if you don't know what that is, find out what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
If I could just add the fact that our needs change over time. So if you're aware of a need and you've always done it a certain way, and then all of a sudden your needs shift, your needs change, people around you might have some pushback when you try to change the script because they're not used to it. People are feeling comfortable and secure when things are predictable. And so when you have to change your method of doing things, it could be difficult. And you still need to have the strength and the courage to speak up for what you want, what you need, and do it in a loving, caring way, of course, and explain to people that, yeah, I used to do things one way, but now it's time I do things a different way because my needs have changed. We need to give ourselves the freedom to do that when it's necessary.
For sure. And I know, like you said, loving and caring, the people may not think that it's so loving and caring, but of course it's going to be something that, we are going to be doing it because it's from a place of love for sure. But yeah. And also I know that because a lot of us, I've heard actually, that when you become 40, for women in particular, when you become 40, when you become 50, is like, this is me time now. This is the time, I've raised my children, they're adults now, and now it's like, now what about me? Like, when the kids start moving out of the house and that sort of thing, and they have their own lives, it's like you kind of start to look at yourself. And so people will often think, well, you've changed. And really what it is that you're no longer, like Linda says, you're no longer doing the things that they're expecting you to do. And so now it's a little bit of me time. So if I could give anything to younger moms who are just starting on this journey, is to try to add this in a little bit more often. If you can't do it every day, at least, try a couple of times a week to do something for you and to just kind of connect back to who you are and become self-aware. So the next part for that I think is vitally important for self-love is self-acceptance. So, to achieve unconditional love for yourself and others is actually with acceptance. But acceptance doesn't mean blind agreement with every action, thought, or circumstance. So it doesn't mean that you're going to, it's the same with accepting other people. It doesn't mean that you're going to agree with everything. And even at this time, for yourself, it doesn't mean that everything. So for me, one is my physical body, the weight that I'm going to accept that I am where I am. It doesn't mean that I can't also look at improving my weight or the way that I take care of myself and that sort of thing. So it just means that I don't have a judgment. So just don't place a judgment or making something inferior or superior. So for one thing to be worse or better than the other, that's kind of how it is with acceptance. Is just not having a judgment on that. It's also about bringing authentic self-confidence. So it's by saying, I am who I am, and that's amazing. And I get to take my space and my place in the world. And I'm really, really, I'm amazing. And I get to celebrate that, celebrate my uniqueness, because my uniqueness is exactly what someone else is looking for. And that's true for every single one of us. I know that, not everybody is going to be that celebrity. Not everybody's going to be that great podcaster that's going to influence millions of people. Just influencing one person is enough. That's it. That's all that it matters. And so with self-acceptance is definitely about embracing your flaws and making sure that you have judgment kind of taken out of that. So for self-acceptance is, again, I'll throw it out to my co-host and see what things they'd like to add for self-acceptance. Linda looks like she's ready to go this time.
I am. I've got some things I want to share about this one. I would like to speak to the notion that what we think matters and what we say about ourselves matters too, because thoughts and words have power, and they have power to influence our reality. In fact, science has clearly demonstrated how our thoughts and feelings can trigger chemical reactions inside our brains that informs every cell in our body about how it should respond and behave. And when we feel stressed or angry or anxious, the hormones of stress triggered in the brain inform the rest of the body that it needs to be on alert. There might be danger. And it does this by activating that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's part of an evolutionary pattern that still plays out through our present day experiences. And this is also how we learn and how we develop resilience every time we successfully overcome challenges. But there's a caveat, because while stress is normal, it's part of what it means to be human. We could have cause for concern if we experience frequent, intense, or long-lasting periods of stress. And here's the part where I want to really stress is that even the seemingly insignificant daily stresses we inflict upon ourselves can become harmful over time. And to help illustrate this point, I want you to think about a moment in your life when you've made a mistake. Maybe you broke something because you weren't paying attention, or you unintentionally hurt someone's feelings, or you forgot about something really important. How do you behave towards yourself when you make a mistake? What do you think about yourself? What do you say about yourself? Is your internal voice self-deprecating with negative language like, I'm so stupid, I'm an idiot, I never get things right, I'll never be good enough? Now imagine for a moment the cumulative stress we inflict upon ourselves if this is the kind of self-talk that happens day in and day out. How you think, how you speak and feel about yourself matters because it affects the way you function, it affects your health, it affects your overall human potential. And beating yourself up about mistakes isn't helpful. We all know we can't change the past. We can only move forward with knowledge gained from our experiences. So what if instead of dwelling on past mistakes, we were to think of them as life lessons rather than life sentences? What if instead of putting ourselves down, we could love ourselves in spite of our mistakes? And I think Maya Angelou said it so well. She said, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better.
Maggie is nodding away at that one because I think that's Maggie's favorite quote by Maya Angelou. I know that it's one of my favorite quotes as well.
I love that one.
Yeah. Maggie or Melanie, you got anything to add to this part about self-acceptance?
I think the only part that I would want to add is that I don't have to accept everything about myself to love myself.
What do you mean?
I can have things that I don't like about myself. And it doesn't mean that I don't love myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I have to blanketly be positive all the time of I'm fabulous, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. I think I can, part of that acceptance is accepting imperfection
Yeah, and I think that,
and
that
accepting
is
that
important.
I'm not perfect
For sure.
and
Yeah.
accepting that, for me, example, this is how I look.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't have to like it to accept it. So for me, self-acceptance is loving myself along with the things that I don't like about myself. Because
Right.
sometimes we don't like things about ourselves, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be letting people think that I always do like myself. No, I don't. There's things that I will always dislike about myself, but I give myself permission to do that too,
Okay.
because I don't have to like everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I don't have to like every color in the rainbow, and I don't have to like every piece of clothing that is certain colors. I can give you an example. I don't like purple. My sister loves purple. She looks amazing in purple. I don't like purple.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make me any less or any better than her because she likes purple.
Right.
So, like, I don't know if I'm getting across that. I just mean, I just, I don't like everything about myself, but I don't think I have to.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're coming across. I think at least I'm understanding your point just fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want our listeners to think that they're less than if there are things they don't like about themselves, because I think all of us have things that we don't like about ourselves.
Right.
And loving ourselves anyway is part of that game.
Yeah. Well, I know, like, personally, me, when so my self-love for accepting my body, because of the weight, it is something that like you said, that it is something that I don't like about myself. Now, it is possible that part of the reasons that I don't like the weight about myself is due to societal pressures and standards, and also from, parental and and other people who influence my life, with conditioning, because there have been times in history where being overweight was actually an idea of status, and so it's actually considered very beautiful. And there's a lot of those paintings and sculptures and stuff of very voluptuous people, and people who were the royalty, who were rich, who being overweight was something that was considered very beautiful in society. And so, sometimes that can also play a part in our ideas, and I think in our concepts of what it is that we think about ourselves. But in this moment, in this time, in this societal pressures and construct, is that I do feel, obviously, the pressures of being overweight. And so I did want to still celebrate parts of my body that I do find attractive and that I do celebrate. And so that's kind of how I did it, to have connections with my physical body. So things, if it's not in a particular the way that it looked. So, having brown eyes, I always wanted, my dad had beautiful blue eyes, and so I always wanted blue eyes when I was when I was younger. And then, funny story is that the generation of my children and nieces and nephews, the three moms we all have brown eyes. Only my eldest son Topher is the only one that has brown eyes. The rest of that generation has green or blue eyes. So I think it's very fitting. But my eyes, if I didn't love my eyes, I remember a boy once telling me that he loved the flecks in my eyes, and then it was like, oh, there is something beautiful about my brown eyes. But I can also be, uh, you know, thankful and grateful for the fact that my eyes allowed me to witness and see sunsets and sunrises, smiles on my children's face. So the hands that I have allowed me to hold hands, or to hold my children, hold my nieces, hold my nephews. My arms, which I may think are a little bit bigger than and I, will wear longer sleeves, not, short no sleeves, I can say that they wrap hugs around people that I love. And so I can still find a way that even though I may not love every part, I can still find something within that to love. So I think that that's important for me. So now my next part is going to be after your self-acceptance, which actually I think ties in exactly the same, is self-compassion, which, Linda did touch on, is part of the negative self-talk. So making sure that we're talking to ourselves lovingly and caring. If those negative self-talk, or that talk that you have when you made a mistake, think about what you would do if you had a friend talking to you the same way that you talk to yourself. How much time would it be before they were no longer that person that you called, and may no longer be your friend? They may fall off in your life. So why do we let ourselves talk to ourselves like that? Why do we say it's okay? This is a time where, I just thought about this song. I think it's Just the Way You Are by Bruno Mars. I actually, a few years ago, thought, as I was listening to that song and the longing of the somebody to sing it to me, I realized that I could sing it to myself. Kind of like with Miley Cyrus with the Flowers song, but not in the same angry way, instead doing the loving way. Was exactly that, was taking that Bruno Mars song, Just the Way You Are, and singing it to yourself. I actually played that probably 5 or 6 times last night while getting ready for this podcast, kind of getting my notes together, was singing that at the top of my lungs. And instead of saying she, I would say me or you or whatever, and just changing it that way. But finding those love songs and sing them to yourself, finding those moments when you're madly in love with somebody, you get those text messages in the morning that say, good morning, beautiful. The first thoughts you think are loving thoughts of the loved one. Last thoughts you think at night are loving thoughts of the loved one. Make those about you, and you'll actually see. So that's self-compassion, and having kind of, letting yourself off for your mistakes, quote unquote, that you make in life. Kind of just being like, okay, yeah, that happened. Let's clean up whatever we need to clean up for that. If you need to make apologies, if whatever those things that you have to do, and pick up whatever lessons it was, leave the rest behind and move forward. So that's the self-compassion part. I know that Linda did talk very similar, like with because self-acceptance and self-compassion, I feel, are very closely tied. So I don't know if anybody, Melanie, do you have anything you'd like?
With self-compassion too comes on a personal level to have compassion by treating yourself with so much self-love, like to give yourself permission to just have a nice bath and have some candles and some soft music, or even make yourself a nice meal, like you're having a date with yourself.
Mhm.
I know sometimes it seems weird, but you need to do that to yourself. If you would do it for somebody else you love, why not for yourself? The same thing, to do something that you're compassionate or love. Is it something like doing a meditation, just taking time for yourself? It could be out in nature, it could be at home, it could even be out somewhere. Some people just like to go shopping and have that fun because that's their compassion. And not spend a lot of money either, but it's just a little outing with themselves. So it's nice to have that compassion with yourself, because if you do it with yourself, you can do it with so many other people and pass it on to others, because you're filling your own cup of self-compassion.
Right. Absolutely.
I'd love to add some more about the power of our words, if you'll allow it, Bunny.
Of course.
Well, I thought it might be nice to deepen our understanding a little bit more about the power of words if we consider how often in our lives we say things like, I have to do this, or I need to do that. And then we begrudgingly go through the motions of completing a dreaded task, even if it is for our own good. Like we'll say things like, oh, I need to lose weight, or I have to go to the gym. I need more sleep, or I have to quit smoking. And all of these well-intentioned choices are good for your health, but it's the negative emotions and feelings of obligation attached to them that can hinder our results. So I would put it out there, like, what if we were to reframe those thoughts in a more positive way? What if we were to reframe those in a way that promotes self-love? Like, I choose to eat better because I deserve to be healthy. I choose to exercise because it lifts my mood and I deserve to be happy. I choose to get more rest to give my body what it needs to function properly. And here's a big one. I love myself enough to end toxic relationships because I deserve to feel safe. And I added that last one because sometimes self-love can also involve saying no to people and things that prevent us from being the best versions of ourselves, and saying yes to people and things that allow us to grow into the loving human beings we're meant to be.
Yeah, it's exactly what you just said is exactly my next part, which was boundaries and creating and enforcing healthy boundaries, because that helps you be able to love yourself. You know, as I was talking about in the first part with the self-awareness. So now you're aware. Now you know what things you need on a personal level, emotional level, even your time, your physical boundaries, financial boundaries, communication, social boundaries. There's a ton of different ways that boundaries show up in our life. And you will be emotionally available to be of service to others when your emotional needs are met. So I know that I heard this speaker talk. I can't remember what her name is, but it was through your Year of Miracles. And she talked about, very often we hear those things where we're reminded that on an airplane, you should put your own oxygen mask on before you can help other people, to not give from an empty cup, those kind of things. Those are things that I've heard of those. What she actually said, which made so much more sense, which was, our cup is for us. So when our cup is overflowing and the saucer that's underneath the cup, that is where we should be giving to other people. So don't deplete our own cup, but instead give what is overflowing. So have your cup overflowing, and what is on the saucer is what you can then give to other people. And that makes perfect sense. And when you consider that boundaries is a good way to ensure that your cup is always full. And I know for sure how you know that you need to create and maintain or enforce healthy boundaries would be if you feel like your cup is getting depleted. If you have times where you're frustrated or angry with somebody, where you're begrudgingly doing something, and not like Linda was talking about with, the self-talk, but where you're doing something but you're resenting, or you think you're sacrificing. Anytime you have sacrifice, resentment is sure to follow behind it. So yes, there are going to be times where, as we talked about, where, young mothers or mothers, people with, I should say, with young children, whatever age you are, if you have young children around, it's not going to matter. It's going to be tiring. So yes, there are times where there are specific things and responsibilities that you've taken on in your life, but it's a very good time to make sure that for boundaries, that you look for support in helping to make sure that your needs are also being taken care of. And some examples that I found for boundaries, because it's never about changing the other person and their behavior. It's about you and what you're saying yes to and what you're saying no to. And again, no, I like to remind people, no is a complete sentence. And oh, that's it. You never need to give somebody an excuse as to why you aren't doing something. You don't have to give anybody an excuse. You can if you would like to, but it is something that isn't necessary. Now, an example of a boundary and setting and enforcing a boundary would be something like, if somebody spoke to you in an abusive or negative way, you could say to them, I am going to remove myself from the conversation. I know I've done this on the phone. I was a call center agent many times, and the places that I worked for told me that I didn't have to take abuse. I didn't have to take swearing. That was not something that was part of my job. So I would give the person one warning, which is expressing my boundary, that if they were to continue to speak with me in that way, I would disconnect the call. I have actually done that in my own life as well, in my personal life, where I have said, if the conversation is going to be in this way, I'm going to remove myself from the conversation, however that looks. So those are expressing boundaries. There are also times where there's emotional boundaries. So an example for that is, say that you had something that you were going through and somebody wanted to talk to you about it. You could say, I appreciate your concern, but I need some time to process my feelings on my own before discussing them. Because I don't know about you, but me personally, if I am in a highly emotional state, my patience level is going to be very short. I'm not going to have the energy or capacity for love that I normally would have. And I may say something or do something that I would later regret and would cause myself pain and the relationship with the person pain. So I may need to take some time. And while I love and appreciate the person, and I love that they would hold space for me, it may have to be done with me kind of cocooning myself for a little while first before I can come out. And that to let them know that I appreciate your love, but as soon as I can, I'll come out and I'll poke my head out and I'll, say, hey. So I see some nodding and some agreement with our people here today that, so I know that I'm definitely hitting a tie for that. Time boundaries, I'd love to, but my schedule is pretty packed right now. Can we find another time that works for both of us? So if we're going out, and this is if you notice, these are not saying a complete like no. Like, do you want to come out? No. But you say, hey, I'd love to come out. My schedule, maybe emotionally, whatever the case may be, right now, I'd need a little bit of time. Physical boundaries, me personally, it's like this one was written for me. I'm not comfortable with hugs from people I don't know well. A handshake is fine, or a fist bump, whatever. I like to refer to myself as a selective hugger. So there are times where my energy is not openly receiving to hugs, but there are some people who, yes, I would hug all the time. I do appreciate when people do ask me, because they're aware of my boundary, and they do ask me if it is a time that they would like. And then financial ones, I'm on a tight budget, so I won't be able to contribute as much as usual. I'm happy to split the bill, but would prefer to stick to my budget and only order what I can afford. These are kind of things that we would have. Even communication boundaries. So some people prefer to talk on the phone, where some people, me included, prefer texts. So, you could say these kind of things, but I think compromise is important too in a relationship, but definitely for boundaries, you can express those things. Social boundaries, I appreciate the invitation, but I'm not really up for socializing, maybe another time, those kind of things. Now, I do know that we have a lot of different ideas on boundaries, but the biggest thing for me is to make sure that it's not that you're trying to change the other person's behavior in any way. Boundaries are about you and what you will accept in your life and the things that you want to do. Do any of my fellow co-hosts have anything they'd like to add into that?
I think it's important to add what self-care is not. Self-care is not one size fits all. And for every person out there, it's going to look different. So what we're saying here today, each one of us, what we say works for us or that we do isn't necessarily going to be yours. It's not one size fits all like a pair of pantyhose. there's no catalog that says if you do this, 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 and this, you're following good self-care. Because self-care to me will look totally different than it does to Bunny, Melanie, Linda, to everybody in the world, because for each one of us, it's going to be different. And that's okay, because this is your journey, not my journey. My journey is only mine. Yours is only yours. So it's important, I think, as well, as much as we're talking about self-care, it's important to talk about what it's not. And it's not a one size fits all in this category.
Absolutely. Yeah. Linda, Melanie, anything to add? Okay. So along with for self-love, then my next point here would be forgiveness. So shame and guilt are biggest taskmasters of the ego. They keep us on task, on being told this is what we have to do, that sort of thing. I already touched on this. When you experience either of these, this is the time where you can look and see if you're trying to fit into somebody else's idea of what you think you should be doing. If it is something that you have for yourself, then I would suggest that it would be something that you could look into doing what Linda suggested, would be to see about if we can reword what it is and in a new way, in a positive. I know that John Shearer talks about this in his mindfulness book, and that is that, say, instead of saying like, I need to do the dishes, like that kind of thing, if you can say exactly what Linda was saying, I like to have a clean home, I like to have clean dishes that I can eat off of, those kind of things, and just changing that mindset. And forgiveness, I think, also comes into, it's very often we talk about forgiveness for other people, but I'm talking about self-forgiveness. So it's also in the time where I know that in a situation that we may have gotten ourselves into in our life where we've made a decision and something has happened, and then we made a mistake and we live with regrets. This is where forgiveness comes into that, is looking back on most of the decisions that I have made in my life. I made those decisions based on the information I had at that time. And at that time, for whatever the case may be, that was the choice that I made. And with the information that I had, that was the best decision for me at that time. Now, whether that was because I couldn't handle it emotionally, mentally, financially, physically, or whether that was legitimately, I thought that was the best decision and didn't foresee the circumstances and consequences that may have arisen later, that's irrelevant. At the time when I made that decision, that was the best choice for me. And now sometimes when you come up to the times where you regret, where you look back on that, that's with new information, but you don't often know that the situation or circumstance, how that would have played out had you made that other choice. We don't know. We can just imagine that it could have been different, but any decision that you could have made may have wound up in something potentially even worse than the decisions that you did make, or better. We don't know. The chance is equal for both. So self-forgiveness would just be a time where you say to yourself, and you give yourself grace, and you say, you did the best that you could. And we can move forward. We learned from whatever the situation was, and we can move forward from that. And try not to repeat that mistake if that's something that we can do. But I mean, we're all human, right? We're all spirit having a human experience. So that's the whole point of this. So that is my part of forgiveness. I don't know if anybody else has anything that they'd like to add for forgiveness. I saw some nodding, so I know that agreement was happening. Yeah. Okay. Now I did talk about authenticity, so I think it's very important to be authentic. I know that in our Voices of Empowerment, it is something that is very important to me, is to help bring authenticity. I think that authenticity is very empowering to people when you get to be who you truly are. that is very, very empowering. Gratitude. So gratitude, I touched upon that as well. For gratitude, it's something that we have talked about in a long time, in manifesting and, having gratitude for the things that are in our future. But what we do have to remember as well is that when we are giving ourselves gratitude, is that part of us are fighting thousands of years of DNA, which was telling us that, so to survive in the world, a lot of people will say, why is it easier to look at the negatives? Because a lot of people, it does seem like we need to actively search for the things to be positive or find for gratitude in our life. Is not something that seems to be the the thing that just automatically comes to us. Now, yes, it is true that there are some people who always see the positive in life, or when you get to the point where you have personally developed, where you have make it so that when you wake up in the morning, you say, how can I be of service today, or what wonderful things. Those types of things usually do take a little bit of a practice. And that seems to be because we are fighting something that is natural for us. Now, the survival of the fittest, as people, the theory of that, would say that when we see something that is dangerous, it is very important to us to remember that danger so it doesn't affect us in the future. And so thousands of years of DNA would have taught that as well, right? Our ancestors who survived would have passed down that information from person to person, both through learned and DNA. It's very important. And so things like the color red in nature actually means danger, poison, like don't eat that or consume that. So those are the types of things that you're kind of fighting the natural DNA survival mode by always seeing. So we would go into a situation, especially as I said, with the forgiveness and looking back and regrets, you're constantly looking at how can I not get hurt in the future? And how I could not get hurt in the future is by looking back at what it is that hurt me in the past and trying not to repeat that. Instead of saying, well, what are the things that were good in that situation that I can take with me to the future to repeat so I can have more of that? So that's kind of where that change happens for looking for gratitude, is actually trying to find the things that you already possess or that you have possessed and you have done well in the past that you can take with you to the future. And the more that you look into it, and my miracle magnet moments that I share is precisely for those daily moments, is to just look at all of the things in your life that you have that you sometimes overlook, but are there, that can help you in the future. Anybody else? I know gratitude's a big one. So we like to do that. So for self-love and, for ourselves and with gratitude, I know I touched that with the body thing, with the hands and all that kind of stuff. Does anybody want to add anything to the self-love?
Yeah, I'd love to add a
Gratitude.
little bit to that.
Sure.
I'd like to speak to the fact that it can be sometimes difficult to conjure up a feeling of gratitude, especially when we're in a really dark, lonely place. I've experienced this firsthand, having overcome depression. It was really difficult for me to think positive, to see the sunny side of life when I was feeling so low. And I learned this technique called transmutation, and I would love to share it now. So transmutation kind of works like this. If you're having difficulty bringing on a feeling of positivity in the present moment, think back on other times in your life, or think about people in your life who naturally encourage that feeling within you. So if you're trying to conjure up a feeling of joy, for example, think back on moments in your life where you were already feeling joyful. Let that feeling fill up your heart and fill up your body. Because if your brain and your heart aren't speaking the same language, if they're not in coherence, it doesn't matter what you try to say intellectually, your heart's not going to believe it. So if you feel it first in your heart, then your brain is more naturally going to be able to accept it as a possible reality. So the transmutation starts by thinking about somebody or something that brings you this feeling that you're trying to conjure up. And then you just slip your brain into the thing that you're actually trying to bring into the present. So you bring the emotion first, and then it brings your thoughts in alignment with what you're trying to bring into your present time.
Yeah, that's very good. I mean, I know me personally, yes, like you said, there are times when you have a little bit of a difficulty pulling that up. Sometimes I do reach out to other people as well to see if they can help me see things a little more positively. But if you're in your cocoon stage, then that might need. And yes, the feelings, 'cause even with the I am meditations, or the I am mantras, is that if I was to say I'm a millionaire, I know I'm not a millionaire. So that's not gonna be something that's going to feel right. So if I said something, very similar to that, then it would be, but if I can say something that would be feeling more authentic, like you said, would help kind of push that. So if I said, I'm open to being a millionaire, that is true. So it'd be a similar thing, but for your self-love. So so saying that I'm perfect, I might not always believe that, but if I could say I'm on my way to perfection, sure, I could believe that. So that, yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. And thank you. Maggie, Melanie. Okay, cool. So the next part that I have here is support systems. So support systems are very important with self-love as well. For sure, when I talked about support systems, many, therapy, coaching, those kind of things, making sure that when you find people that do support what it is you're trying to achieve is very important. So not counteracting what it is that you're trying to achieve. As Maggie said, everybody's journey is individual. So not everybody is going to mesh with what it is that you're trying to do. So finding the people, I know that often in spiritual communities, especially, you'll start to hear find your tribe. So find the people who are very similar to you. And I think that's because they support you in a way. I know for me personally, when I found my tribe, and the three ladies here, as well as many others, are part of that tribe, it's very supportive, in the way of accepting who I am, in the way of giving me a safe space to explore and become curious about the new expansive ways that I can be. So finding new ways to love myself, finding new ways to express my authenticity, being able to express my authenticity. So being able to say, I know we made plans, but I'm too tired. I had, an emergency, and I had stayed up late, or didn't get very much sleep, or I had an emotional, whatever the case may be. I know that while there may be some disappointment on either end of that, that I'm still accepted, and it's not going to be, well, you didn't text me, at 12 noon. So that's it. We're not friends anymore, that kind of thing. It's not like that. It's definitely, a support system in that sort of way. Now I know that in some ways, this does mean that there may be people in your past that maybe are not as supportive, that if you don't feel comfortable cutting them completely out of your life, you may choose to spend a little less time until you can stand on your own 2 feet, kind of thing, before you communicate with them again. So I know that that's where healthy boundaries is definitely important as we're doing this. Does anybody want to add into that at all?
I think it's important for us to also note that sometimes we don't have to find our tribe finds us.
That's true.
When we authentically work on becoming who we want to be and who we're called to be, our tribe just finds us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not anything that we have to work at. And it's all a practice. And when we practice being authentic, when we practice going after what we're looking for, the universe has a way of just allowing things to show up for you. And I wouldn't want people to think that they have to do all the work, because we don't. Like, I remember for myself in particular, is I stood on my front porch at a time of desperation and said, this needs to be my year of healing.
Mm.
And then I did nothing. And I waited. And the universe brought my tribe to me.
Mm.
I just had to do one step in front of the other. And that's why a lot of the times when people are dealing with depression, anxiety, those type of things, when people say, well, be happy. Well, you know, sometimes you wish you thought of that. Because
Right.
I can guarantee you that every person who suffers from depression and anxiety is trying to do that. And sometimes part of self-care is just doing nothing and allowing the universe to unfold before you, and to not put pressure on yourself, to take that time for you, and your tribe will find you.
Yeah.
As you change and evolve, it's the same as when you practice gratitude, you eventually don't have to practice it anymore. It just becomes who you are. When you practice mindfulness on a regular basis, it eventually becomes who you are. When you practice kindness, it eventually becomes who you are. And it finds you. So part of self-care is taking care of you so that everything else can fit into you.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, like, for sure, your tribe finds you in the fact that you're not actively looking for people to fit into your life, but you do still have to take some kind of steps, though. It's not necessarily that they're knocking on your door without any, like, without
No, I
any
mean,
prompting.
well, sometimes
Yeah.
they might knock on my
No,
door, but
without
I
any
could meet
prompting. Like,
I could meet somebody, you know, at an event. I
right.
could meet somebody at the
Yes.
grocery store.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
No,
as
that's what I mean.
generic as that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
for
it
sure.
is generic as that. I could be walking my dog and have
Yeah.
a conversation with somebody on the street.
You're
That
right.
that day, when I woke up in the morning, I didn't plan that.
For sure.
I didn't go searching for it,
Yeah.
but it was just there.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yes, sometimes, like when we on that, sometimes you have to go to that event if the
Yeah.
universe is telling you to
And you
do
have
that.
to be open to it too.
And
Like
you
you
have
have,
to be open. But
yeah.
I don't, I think sometimes healing just finds you.
Mm-hmm.
All of that as we make ourselves available to it.
Right. Absolutely. And being open is part of the self-love too, right? Being open to having and finding a support system, and to, allowing those people to show up for us. Now, as we're getting close to the end here, I just have a few little things left for the few things that I have here, which is misconceptions of self-love. So this is important, not only the discussions of what self-love is, but the things that it isn't. So the number one misconception would be that self-love is selfish. That it would be something that, how many times have you heard that, right? You can't, what do you mean you're leaving your child at home with a babysitter while you go out and go out to a movie and have some fun? Well, no, but you need to take that time, right? You need to, like we said earlier, you need to fill up those things. I would love to use an example of Dr. Wayne Dyer when he talked about what it was like when he said about the thing of what it is that when you have something inside of yourself, what you have inside of you is what is going to pour out to the world. So especially at times of great stress and anxiety and things like that, if you get squeezed a little bit by the outside world if what comes out of you is anger and frustration, that's because that's what's inside. Just like if you took an orange and you squeezed it, what would come out of that orange would be orange juice, not apple juice, because that's an orange. So very much for yourself is not selfish to have self-love, because to have what's inside be to come out. So that is what is there. A next one would be that self-love would be arrogant. So, you know, where people very often want to not boast or not celebrate parts of themselves, the things that they love about themselves, because they're worried that other people may think that they're egotistic or that they're arrogant. But authentic confidence comes from the ability to celebrate and appreciate the things that you are genuinely, authentically parts of who you are, where arrogance comes from the necessity to cover your insecurities and your inner turmoil. And I know that people will feel the difference energetically. Like, people just know the difference between celebrating something that you could be your biggest cheerleader. I know that I love to cheerlead for other people. I have a hard time cheerleading for myself, but I'm working on that. And I think a lot of it is because of that whole idea of arrogance and just making sure that I'm not seeming like I'm superior to anybody else, because that's not what that's meant when you're actually celebrating my accomplishments or celebrating the amazing parts of me. It's not at the detriment of other people. And the last misconception is that self-love is a destination, meaning that it is done one time, you reach it, and one and done. Oh, I'm here now. I love myself. I never have to. That's not true. We have times in our life, like I know me personally, I loved my little face, and then I noticed that I started to get jowls last year because hitting 48 years old, it's a little less elasticity in my face, and I started finding new wrinkles and new little things. And so obviously there are physical changes that happen throughout your life. There are changes that happen with time. Say that you took on new responsibilities, and now your time, the things that you could do before, you don't have the same type of time. You're emotional. If you're going through some things emotionally in different parts of your life, those kind of things can also affect your self-love. And so those are things that it's kind of good. And with the self-care, as as Maggie had said, and even Linda and Melanie had touched on as well, the self-care things, the different ways that we give ourselves self-care, the different rituals that we have done, they may no longer work for us. So then you might have to change those and just reevaluate what the things are. I will say that journaling and writing is a big one. It's very big, but sometimes I don't feel like the writing is fast enough. So I have taken to journaling through voice recording. So even doing that. So changing the ways that you do things and do that. So for the misconceptions, any of my fellow co-hosts want to touch on self-love is selfish, arrogant, or a destination? Anything? No, no. So I did everything perfectly. Great. No, thanks. Just kidding. Just kidding around. But yeah, so it does seem like we have come to the end of our hour. So if there isn't anything else that our co-host wanted to talk about, I wanted to maybe throw it out to any of the people who are with us live on our Zoom to see if anybody wanted to add anything. We will just have you put up your hand. We won't bring you on camera, but we will have you either put it in the chat, or if you'd like to talk, we could let you do that. If there's anybody, put up your hand. If not, I'll have one more thing after. Oh, I see a hand. And this would be Anne.
The only thing I wish to add is how I appreciated this, because this hour spent with you guys is self-care.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this is one for me. But what I appreciate for all that you've mentioned, the points about self-care, is to learn about forgiveness, authenticity, gratitude, boundaries, and what awesome self-acceptance, self-awareness. I learned through being around like-minded people, and
Right.
that's where my growth started. Is like, yeah, find your tribe and all that. But I want to point the detail of the mirror effect,
Right.
the mirror, because I first thought it was like me sitting in front of the mirror and saying, I love you and I love you and I accept you. But really, having learned that part of me resonated, I saw in other people in my circle or events, or it's unbelievable. I can say almost everybody here today, there's one point that I know that you touched me, or that I learned from just by a few words, being at the right place at the right time, and help with my healing, with my self-love. So that I appreciate the experience, and I will keep with me, is like, we are each other's mirrors, and it's for us to be in the moment and catch it and learn from it.
Right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you. Okay. Well, it looks like they're.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Helen. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. It was really amazing. There was so much to learn. Thank you.
Perfect. So yes, we thank you everybody for the support, and for the future support for people who are going to be watching and listening to this in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to end this with something that I picked up from someone else. And again, I can't remember who, but so I can't give them credit. So if this is yours, thank you, if you're listening to this. But this is kind of a journey for something that we can do if we have kind of a hard time understanding self-love. I know for me personally, when I've had a much more, I'm much easier to give these things like acceptance and forgiveness and grace and compassion to other people before I give them to myself. So I've learned to do the out to the in. So this helped me very much in that as well. This is an impactful situation, meditation. I don't know what it. I guess not meditation. I don't know what exactly to call it, but just kind of an exercise that we're going to go through here to kind of just see. So if you can just relax, close your eyes if you feel compelled to do that. Turn off cameras if you would like be more comfortable. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to take a few slow breaths. So you're going to breathe in, breathe out. And as you breathe out, you're going to relax into your chair. Now imagine, if you will, a person living who you love a lot. It does have to be a person in this case. So somebody who you love a lot. And as you breathe in, take all that love and breathe out love to them as well. Now, one day you wake up and you find out that you are in the body of that person and they are in your body. And you receive a message from Spirit that you will spend the next year in this person's body, and they will spend the next year in your body. Breathe in as you take that all in and out. Now imagine, if you will, what that year looks like, where you will be in this person's body, the person who you love so incredibly much and who you want the entire world for. You will be in this person's body for the next 365 days. at which time they will get their body back the way that you have left it. What are some things that you might do for their physical well-being? Might you get more sleep? Might you eat a more balanced meal? Might you get up in the morning half an hour earlier and take that walk around the block? Might you take that moment to meditate, color in a coloring book, dance on the dance floor? Maybe you'll even connect with an old friend or a loved one. You may even set yourself up or themselves up for future opportunities in their life. You have 365 days. What are all of the things that you might do for this person because of how much you love them? Would you make sure that they accepted themselves? Would you talk nicely to them? Would you forgive them? And as you come to that time of that 365th day, when you get to lovingly hand over the life that you helped hold on to for that year. And I'm sure you're imagining that person, since you love them so much, would have done the same for you and your life, and your body, and your emotions, and your spiritual body. Now, think about a time when instead of that being that other person that you loved, that it's actually for you, and what sorts of things you can do to lovingly care for yourself. And as you take a few moments here to reacclimate to the present moment, bringing along all of the love you cultivated in these few moments we had together. You can come back to the room when you're ready.
Thank you, Bunny. That was really great. I enjoyed that so much. It's quite a nice thought experiment. I
That
appreciate
was,
that.
right?
Yeah.
When I first heard that one, I was like, wow,
I
because
appreciate it. Thank you, Bunny.
yeah, that's definitely something that helped me as a person who was out and to bring it in. So I thought I'd share that.